Hey everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers pregame presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the afternoon, I suppose. And joining me today, it's the man behind Flyperbole, Steve Jacob. What's going on, Steve?
Oh, Bill, I am feeling so good on our Sunday between NFL playoff games here. And when I first looked at this on the schedule, I said, oh, that's a nice little afternoon hockey. Might be a fun one with the Avalanche. Not feeling great about this right now, pal.
Well, it's, the Flyers obviously pull off a pretty big trade the other day. We talked about it in post-game. We did an emergency show at like midnight that night after it became official. All available right here on the YouTube. Hello to all of our new subscribers. Glad you could join us. It's funny, though. The Calgary, they have Frost and Farabee suited up for them already. But Kuzmenko and Pelletier having some U.S. work visa issues. It'll probably be sorted out by Tuesday's game in Utah, but they are not here yet for this afternoon against Colorado. So there were some call-ups, and we're going to be going with a pretty interesting lineup against the Avs here today. Flyers put out on social media. It's going to be 11-7, the old 11 forwards, 7 defensemen. They're going to go a man short. Listen, they played with like 10 for most of the game on Wednesday, so they should be ready for it, or Thursday, whenever it was. So they should be ready for it at least. The lines that we saw in practice the other day were Cates with Forster and TK, Coots with Richard and Mish, a Bowles between Lawton and Brink, and then Gaucher getting his call up between Delorier and Hathaway, but it seems like no Delorier yet. So we're going to be going 11-7. So you have to guess that the 7 defensemen, Sanheim, York, Ristolainen, and Drysdale. Andrei got recalled. Eric Johnson, listen, played in Colorado for 100 years. Why not give him the chance?
He knows that ice great, Bill.
Yeah, exactly. And Nick Seeler. So it's going to be a real interesting lineup today. Like Tony Dick is in there. Rodrigo Abols is in there. Jacob Gaucher is in there, making his NHL debut. I mean,
I love half an AHL lineup against one of the powerhouses in the NHL, at least offensively.
If you're like one of the tank people, this is the lineup you want, right? Like this is, and listen, this is what I think you should be doing. Like earlier this season when we played Chicago, I like tweeted their lineup and was like, regardless of like what side of the debate, how they should be, rebuilding you're on, like, this is a disaster, what Chicago's doing. They have nothing but 30-year-olds and Connor Bedard. Like, that's a waste of time. Every game is a waste of time. At least this, like, is Jacob Gaucher, Tony Dick, are they really going to be anything? Probably not.
There's one way to find out.
They get to play. You get to see them. And now Emil Andrae's back up. He actually does have a chance to be part of the future. He looked pretty damn good in his call-up earlier this season. Torts didn't think so at the end, but everyone else seemed to really enjoy what they were getting out of Emil Andrae. My biggest question is, like, can he keep himself from getting killed? Like, that's my question about Emil Andrae. He just seems to take a lot of hits, but we'll see.
Like Rocky.
Exactly. Yeah, except he's like 5'9", 170.
Listen, Rocky's always shorter than the other boxer. He gets hit in the face about 1 million times a movie, but he wins most of the time.
But I am just... I'm excited to watch this lineup today, honestly. It might be like, they might lose 7-1.
I'm feeling the over today, Bill.
Yes. Colorado team total over feels like a lock today. We probably should have looked into that for the bets. Maybe I'll look that up. We do have a special segment coming up for you in a little bit. Sat down earlier this week with Nathan Rudolph, Rudo from DNVR. Get a little bit of the Colorado perspective of this game and everything that's going on. You know, they recently pulled off a little trade of their own that I wanted to talk to them about. So that's fun.
Theirs involved a little bit more high-end talent than ours.
It did. Listen, Kuzmenko, who knows, man? He might even be a boat.
This guy's stat line. I knew very little about Kuzmenko before Thursday. And then I looked at his stat line in like 4 years. It is just like, you want to talk up and down like a toilet seat? Kuzmenko year to year is like all-star,
Like-
trash. All-star, trash.
25
It's just like up. It's a roller coaster. It's horrible.
25-year-old rookie puts up like 70-some points.
Yeah.
And then starts out the next year horrible for Vancouver. Finishes up with Calgary and has like 25 points and 20. Oh, there's something here. And then this year he's got like 15 points. So we'll see how it goes. I think this could be good for Michkov. We'll probably get into this a little bit more in a post game, and obviously later this week we'll have early, first show of next week tomorrow. We'll have 4:00 show normal time. Hopefully Kelly will be able to join us, but that'll be what we really get into. But this lineup, man,
It's wild. It is absolutely wild. I mean,
how do you think like Forster, Cates, TK? Okay, yeah, I like it.
yeah.
After that, there's just a whole lot of question marks. Couturier and Michkov, I think, have looked good together, but Michkov coming off a couple of games where he played 9:45, and then it was like, we're going to play even less.
A little bit of yelling with the coach on the bench. That's what you want to see.
Yells at John Tortorella, and then gets benched for about 30 minutes of basically the entire second half of that game.
I love Flyers hockey.
Tony Richard's going to be out there.
I was going to say, I like Richard with them because that's not a lot of speed for 2/3 of that line. That's not a lot of speed. So Richard really has jets on him. So I'm excited for that aspect. That's at least an interesting line there. From here, yikes.
Yeah, like Rodrigo Abols with Scott Lawton and Bobby Brink. I like Bobby Brink a lot. I like what I've seen out of Abols, but like
that feels like they picked three names out of a hat.
Yeah, he is an NHL fourth liner.
Yeah,
that's what he is, and like maybe a good one, but like, he's in your top 9 right now because you have no guys. And then like they're not even playing Delorier, and you just have Gaucher and Hathaway there on your fourth line. And honestly, let's just do the bets now because I want to talk about
live.
I want to talk about this. We'll get to the Frost and Farabee stuff in post game and all next week. This pregame pick segment is brought to you by Bet365. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in PA. If you or somebody who has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. And we have just one bet on the board today, and it's going to be Jacob Gaucher at 8-1 to score an anytime goal. He leads the Phantoms. He's got 14 goals in the AHL. And honestly, how cool would it be? A couple of years ago, Gaucher is a captain and a point-per-game player in his final season in the Q. Then he spends his whole first season as a pro in the ECHL after going undrafted. Moves up to the Phantoms last year, and then this season earns an ELC in December. Now he's making his NHL debut. Like, why the hell not?
Why not?
It's a fun... It's just a really fun thing to root for today in a game that like they could very well lose 7-1. Hopefully he's the one. And I do think this 11 forwards thing, that's why I wanted to get to it now, works in Gaucher's favor. If this was just your typical fourth line, let's say they activate Delorier and it's Gaucher centering Delorier and Hathaway. He's going to get 4 minutes and they're going to be with Nick Delorier, who rarely scores,
Correct.
He'd have no chance. This, however, the 11-7 allows him to play with everyone. Like, he's going to get a shift with like half the players on the roster today. Maybe he gets a deflection. Maybe he puts in a rebound. He's going to be fired up. It's his NHL debut. He's going to have that little bit of an emotional boost. He's going to get some shifts with a lot of different guys, some of whom are even NHL players in the lineup today.
Hey.
I just think this actually works in his favor because you can let's get him out there with TK for 2 minutes and see what happens.
There's going to be some mixing and matching by the end of this game. There's no doubt. I mean,
the
you
roster
get that inherently from 11-7, but
it's 11-7, and like the roster is guaranteed to change in 2 days because you're bringing back 2 NHL players to, you would assume, replace guys who aren't really NHL players.
You would assume.
So that'll be fun. But I think this is a cool story. So I want to bet on Jacob Gaucher to score today. And at 8-1, why the hell not?
At 8-1, hey, throw a buck down, folks. Win $8. Throw $2 down.
Yeah.
Now we're living on the edge.
Yeah, get a 6-pack of Guinness. Like, why the hell not?
Yeah. Now we're talking. It's almost St. Patty's Day. Come on.
Exactly. I do want to get. I do just want to get your thoughts a little bit here, Steve, because we haven't. I haven't got to talk to you since the day of the trade. Kelly was here for pre and post game that day, and it was like unfolding in front of us. We didn't know what the return was. It was Morgan Frost is pulled from the game. We think it's him, and it's like, no, actually, he's banged up. He's not feeling well. Whatever. It was like, actually, it was both.
That back and forth was fascinating.
He wasn't feeling great, and since we traded him, we figured might as well not put him back out there. And with michkov benched, it's like, well, we can't pull Farabee. Meanwhile, like Kuzmenko got scratched before the Flames game. Pelletier got pulled like in the middle of the first. I think he played like 6 minutes maybe in the game and like got pulled after that. Once it was like, yeah, it's going to be him too. Just a crazy way this all went down. We weren't sure. It ends up being okay. Here's a second. Here's a seventh in 3 years just for funsies. Yeah, what was your reaction to just watching it unfold?
What an aggravating tale throughout the evening. Because for me, the thing was, I went through a lot of emotions on this where I went from, okay, well, it makes sense for Frost to get traded at this point. And then it's like, oh, Farabee's included too. Seeing all that.
Farabee has to stay in the game because we only have 10 forwards already because michkov is benched. That was just hilarious.
It was so funny. And just seeing it go back and forth and also seeing like the reactions go from, oh, well, there's got to be more to the trade because Flames fans are saying like Kuzmenko and Pelletier are just throw-ins, so it has to be more. And then when you see the trade, it's like, no, there's not more. It's a second-round pick.
It's a second-round pick
takeaway there. And my initial reaction, because I did a live reaction thing at like 11 o'clock at night, was like I was kind of pissed off because like I felt like they wasted my time with all this, and it was not much of a trade ultimately. And, it also is hard to stomach as somebody who has to watch this team and podcast about this team to see one of their like top 6 forwards get traded for relatively nothing. But people kind of talked me off the ledge on that very show I was doing where I was reassured, like, okay, not reassured, but people were like, oh, well, this is all like part of a grander scheme. It's all about clearing that cap space for future moves. So I accept that, but it is a bummer to see guys that you had really high hopes for in Frost and Farabee. And I think the more disappointing guy to me is Farabee ultimately. Yeah. Like Morgan Frost, I think we've all expressed like discontentment over his up and down play, his toilet seat play, as John Tortorella would call it. And we were kind of ready to move on from him. But Farabee, I felt like he never got to that peak. And look, he is older now. So like he probably is who he is at this point. But it was still a bummer because I've always really liked Joel Farabee, and I've always wanted to see the final form of Joel Farabee as an NHL player and see him like really excel. So that really stunk. But I get the trade. It's a smart move for the long term, maybe once we see what they actually do with that money. But it was a little tough to swallow in the immediate moment.
It was really, you have to wrap your mind around the fact of this is an old school, like how they used to just trade cash.
Yes.
Like this was the Flames sent us $5 million. Like that's really what it came down to.
Yeah.
Like, okay, there's not going to be any salary retention. And Danny was like, there weren't a ton of teams really all that interested in Joel Farabee at $5 million. Like even last summer, I thought, okay, he had a bad, like from February on after the All-Star break. It's like he never came back. I don't know. But you look at his career-wise production and the cap's going up. You don't know how much, and it turns out like a ton over the next few years.
Yes.
The cap's going up. You have this guy locked up through his prime. Maybe it's a little expensive, but teams love knowing what like they're going to be spending. It's that cost certainty.
It's big.
Maybe he has some more value than I think. And now it's like, oh, the trade was like we got a second for Morgan Frost and we traded Farabee. Like you take that $5 million.
You just take the money.
You take the money. Maybe he works out for you. And like, I think there's a good chance both of these guys are better than what they were here. Just because it's not the same expectation. Like they needed to be centerpieces here, and they're complementary players. And without the spotlight of like, we're the team that drafted you. We've had these expectations since 2016, 2017. We need you to be a certain thing. and you just aren't. Like now it's, yeah, man, you're going to be the third guy with like Huberdeau and Kadri. You're going to be a third center, like it's just a different role in different circumstances. And I think it could work out for them. But in Philly, like we need the roster spots. We need the cap space.
Right. And they were relied on too much. Morgan Frost shouldn't be a second line, first line player. He just shouldn't be. And they get to be third line guys like they really should be. And on top of that, like they both needed fresh starts. They both were not John Tortorella guys. And we know John Tortorella probably isn't going anywhere just yet. And as long as that's the case, they're not going to thrive because they don't work well in his system.
All right, we do have the lines, and it's what we thought. Charlie just tweeted them out a second ago. It's a Bowles with Lawton and Brink, Cates with Forster and Konechny, Couturier centering Tony Dick and Michkov, and then Gaucher, Hathaway as your, the 6th and 7th forwards, or the 10th and 11th. And then he says D pair cycled because they're 7, and that makes sense. It's gonna be fun. Like we're gonna see Sanheim play both sides today. If it like 7 defensemen's always funny. It's
gonna be ridiculous.
But it's always a good time. All right, what I want to do now is throw it to our interview that we recorded a couple of days ago with DNVR's Nathan Rudolph to talk a little about the Colorado Avalanche and everything going on with them this season. And then we're going to come back just to say goodbye. But here is Rudo from DNVR on Flyers Avs. We are joined today by our friends out in DNVR, specifically Nathan Rudolph. What's going on today, Rudo?
I think my presence might make it less special, but we're here to do it anyway.
Listen, I'm honestly always just happy to split the pregame duties. If I can
I hear you.
throw this up and kill a couple of minutes of the show, that's absolutely all right with me. Looking forward to this one because honestly, I like watching the Avs, but the headlines lately not on the ice for the Colorado Avalanche. I don't know if you heard about this, but the Avs traded Mikko Rantanen to the Carolina Hurricanes. Have you heard anything about this? You end up getting back Marty Necas and Jack Drury. There's a bunch of other moving parts, but that's the crux of it. Let's start with the Rantanen part of this trade. How are Avs fans taking it, and what's the team's explanation for trading a star amidst a cup contending season?
Avs fans are honestly really split on this. Obviously, Mikko was on his way to being an all-time Av. You could make an argument he already is a top 10 Av of all time, but the Avs ultimately moved on. There are a lot of people that are down bad about this trade for sure. And then there are some people that are okay with it because the reality of Mikko Rantanen is, yes, he's one of the best players to ever play for the Avalanche, but also, especially in the regular season, he's a guy who's willing to coast around, and he's good enough to get away with that in the regular season. When it comes crunch time playoffs, he had always showed up for the Avs. So when it mattered, he was there. Ultimately, Colorado took a look at this. We are in January now. He's a free agent in July. They had extensive contract talks that the team felt like hadn't gone well enough. So they said, look, we cannot risk giving away this big of a piece for nothing and letting him walk in free agency. They found a move that they felt like got enough of a return back that they decided to pull the trigger and not risk it. Realistically, as with most trades in the NHL, when you're trading the best player, you rarely win the deal. I don't think the Avs are a better team today, but I do think they did get a couple of extra draft pick pieces and stuff that they'll be able to add more to their lineup when it's all said and done. It still hurts, though. It hurts inside.
Now, the return for this, I guess it's centered around Marty Necas. He's a player a lot of Flyers fans have kind of honed in on this summer when it looked like he was on the trade block, and it always looked like Carolina wasn't a long-term commitment. He ends up signing the deal this summer, but it's just a 2-year bridge, and it always kind of felt like his permanent home wasn't going to be in Carolina. So I know a lot of Flyers fans were looking at him as a potential addition, and you end up also getting Jack Drury. What's the early impression of the return for the trade?
Necas has been great. It made sense off the hop. He seems like he should be a great fit in Colorado, and he has been through a handful of games so far. The speed is amazing. He's another great play driver that the Avs add to the arsenal next to Nathan MacKinnon. there's a lot to really, really like about that connection. He's not going to be Mikko Rantanen, and I think that's the one big concern for Colorado is Mikko is arguably the best shooter on the Colorado Avalanche. Nate's just fine shooter, willing to shoot the puck, but he doesn't have that elite level shot that someone like Mikko does. So we are going to still have to see who ends up putting goals in the back of the net for Colorado. I know everyone knows McKinnon was a 50-goal scorer last year, but he's a guy who scores on volume, not elite shooting. And then Drury has been a nice surprise so far for me. I think realistically, he probably projects to be the Avs 4C. He's playing 3C right now, but he's picked up a couple of nice points for the Avs. He's playing well for them. He's a great faceoff guy, which the Avs are in desperate need of more of. So there are a lot of things that make sense for this trade for Colorado. Again, it's just, I'm not quite sure about the total value of it all.
Well, when you eventually bring in Sidney Crosby, obviously it'll all make sense, right?
Yeah. Hey, look, if they pull off that, then you'll never question this front office again. I'll put it to you that way. But also, if they pull off that, they've probably committed crimes.
Listen, it's like Vegas, short-term crimes for long-term gain, you know? It seems like the Avs kind of haven't been able to fill that void at center that's been left by Landeskog, and honestly, going back to the Cup team too with Naz Kadri.
Yep.
You've tried Ryan Johansson. Thanks for that headache. Casey Middlestat has been kind of what Casey Middlestat's always been, just okay, not exactly killing it in that role behind McKinnon. So I guess my question about the center position is, can Jokic skate?
I think he becomes the 1C if it turns out he can skate. McKinnon can get behind that guy at this point, but it's an interesting spot because I think the Avs have made their bed with Casey Middlestat as the 2C. They're just going to live with that as much as anything is because they don't have the cap space to go out and get a better one. They don't really have a whole lot of options barring more major surgery than what they just did. And I do think that's part of the Natchez deal. You got a play driver. You can take him away from McKinnon. You can put him next to Middlestat. You can help that guy on the second line start going the right direction a lot more. And Middlestat's season has been odd. He started unbelievably hot, was playing fantastic hockey, and then has gone unbelievably cold. And now over the last 5-10 games, he's starting to normalize a little bit and things are starting to feel a little bit better with him. But even if you have Casey as your 2C, the Avs are still short on depth. Like I said, Drury's probably more of a 4C for them long-term. You want a 3C that you feel like can, in a pinch at very least, step up. If Middlestat's having a bad night, you wouldn't mind having a guy that could fit that 2C role for you. And the Avs are built as a team a little bit weird right now. Their bottom six lacks scoring ability. It just does. So it would be hard to find the correct fit. Ideally you'd like a guy that can play two-way, but how much is out there, right? You have to live with what the market can give you. The Gabe Landeskog situation, it's something I ask every time I get to talk to somebody from out there, because like originally it was supposed to be like 12, 16 months. Now we're like at 20 months and it's, I don't know. Is there any sort of, the update is we'll see, but like, is there any sort of hope that he might be joining you guys for the playoffs or next year or ever at this point? If I'm honest, the hope is draining rapidly. To be honest, like we're talking about drifting into year 3 of this for Landeskog at this point. There's certainly no chance he comes back in the regular season this year. That's off the table at this point. So it would be playoffs at earliest. I want it to happen. I think there is a world where it can happen, but every day we go on that he not only there's no news, he's not practicing with the team. There's not even a no contact practice. He's doing these skates on his own, but we haven't seen progress, legitimate visual progress in so long that it's hard to really expect anything at this point. This deadline has been pushed back so many times. It's already pushed back to this year's playoffs. If he misses that deadline, realistically going into the offseason, the Avs pretty much have to operate as he's never coming back if he's not back at that point.
That's a bummer because he was a really fun player to watch, but I guess that's what it takes to win a cup. There has been kind of a stabilizing force added for you guys recently. Mackenzie freaking Blackwood, a couple of games, and all of a sudden here's a 5-year deal. How are you guys enjoying Blackwood so far?
Yeah, Blackwood's first 12 games here were unbelievable. Vezina caliber 12 games, and he's come back down to earth now, but still has been a quality goaltender for Colorado. The Avs have always ventured, and I shouldn't say always, the last handful of years have tried to find value at the goalie position by getting a little bit cheaper contracts, maybe unproven guys. Blackwood fell slightly into the unproven category, but the Avs were willing to commit this deal because they were done with this. They said, hey, we've bounced around. It's been successful. It's failed. We need to lock up this position. And they truly do believe Blackwood is the guy to be there long-term. Obviously, they signed the deal, but it's shown the underlying play that Blackwood has. And I think what's most important for a goalie in Colorado, he can face 40 shots a night and be locked in, and he can face 18 shots a night and make the saves he needs to make. With Colorado volatility this season, especially, you can get an elite defense in front of you and you might get a disaster in front of you. You never know. So he can do both for them. And I think there's a lot of encouraging reasons to believe this should be successful.
It's a shame because we were having fun early in the season with the Flyers have the worst goaltending in the league except Georgiev.
Yeah.
Look at that. A guy somehow listed below a Flyers goaltender. It hasn't quite stabilized exactly the same as Colorado's has. Last one I got for you, Rudo. What else should we just know about this current iteration of the Avalanche? Like a thing that isn't McKinnon and Makar, right? Because that's what I'm going into this game thinking, oh yeah, I get to see two of the 5 best players in the league. This is fun. What else should I know about them?
Artturi Lehkonen is, you talk about that player that Gabe Landeskog was and that style of player. Artturi Lehkonen is the guy filling that void for Colorado. You can put him on any line. He'll fix it. He'll do the right things. He works extremely hard. His shooting percentage is astronomical this year. The other night he scored a goal off his butt. And he's just, when things are going in for you, things are going in. But that guy works his tail off every single night. And of anyone on the Avs has earned it. As much as obviously the best players have amazing skill and are just that good, but he goes out and makes sure he does everything right every night, and he usually gets rewarded for it.
Just astronomical, 24.5%. That is quite that's ridiculous, honestly. But I guess if you have some of those stars feeding you the puck, it's not insane. All right, thanks a lot for joining us. Really appreciate it. We will talk to you next time we see the Avs.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And that was DNVR's Nate Rudolph. I believe Charlie joined them for their pregame show today because obviously I'm not good enough to.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a big snub there, bro.
Yeah, I was a little hurt.
It's fighting words.
It was. It's always fun when you do these and it's like, okay, we're done. It's like, oh, half the time.
Oh, great. All right.
But that was that was DNVR's Nate Rudolph, and it is funny right after that, the day after that, the Flyers make a huge trade, and just where the two teams are, though, to be selling Mikko like that, I still can't wrap my head around the idea of being in pursuit of a Stanley Cup and just going, well, we might lose them, so
we got to trade one of the best.
I don't know. I think I'd just rather have him for the Cup run, but this is something that's going to come up, I think. It's come up on a bunch of the national shows in the last couple of days about the cap going up. Teams are going to have internal budgets. We might start seeing a return of not everyone spending to the cap. Yeah, man, we can have.
Oh, that's the Flyers' time to shine right there.
It certainly is.
Ed Snyder's going to appear from the afterlife and say spend.
All right, before we get out of here, let's get to this. We have one super chat. So let's see here from J.E. Frucioni. On points percentage, Flyers would draft 9th today, and that may rise on its own with all our 2025 picks. If we could move up into the top handful of picks, would you shy away from Hagen's a 1C based on him being at Boston College? I don't know. First of all, top 10 picks don't get traded. It's so freaking rare. Even the Devils last year, it was oh, well, maybe they're going to get UC Saros. No, they're not going to do that. They'd rather just pick 9th and draft a guy and, it's just so freaking rare for these things to happen. We always want it. Oh, yeah, well, they have all these things. The reason we're willing to give all that up to get up into the top 5 is because those are way more valuable and the teams drafting there probably did it on purpose.
Right.
It's, every now and then you just have those seasons like the Devils last year where they're drafting wherever they were, 9 or 10. It's like, oh, they might trade this because like they're in win now mode. That might happen, but typically they want those players because the team is real bad.
Right, and it's also a very good player that the thing about the NHL is when you get like a lower pick that has some high potential, you might not see that guy for like 3-4 years because you really have to develop that guy heavily. A guy in the top 10, typically you'll see that guy in like 2-3 years at most.
Yeah.
And that's one of the few times you can get a guy who's NHL ready immediately.
Does the BC thing scare
that's
you?
valuable. No, I don't care. This is the thing.
Now that most of those guys are gone, like because they're all in the league now.
Well, and like number one, like what a bunch of chumps. Like, come on, just play hockey for millions of dollars. Like, this is not a big deal. But this is where, Danny Briere, Keith Jones, and all the great guys in the scouting department had to do their due diligence. They have to go and they have to do interviews with the guy and make sure, hey, are you excited about coming here potentially? And that's where they have to feel him out, feel their character out. And if there's a red flag, back the heck off. But, that's their job, is to figure this out.
All right, this has been PHLY Flyers pregame presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Make sure you're following us right here on the YouTube page. We got a ton of views this week, a ton of new viewers. So for everyone who may be just coming around for the first few times, we do this every pre and post game. We have daily shows on the off days. Subscribe right here on the YouTube. Follow us, hit that reminder bell so you never miss a live show. Follow the Twitter at PHLY_Flyers, where I do all my in-game tweeting, and follow the podcast as well. All right, I'm Bill Matz. That's Steve Jacob. Until post game, let's go Flyers.
We all silly like the mayor.